me in this Ask Me Anything session about the iQOO 3 5G out here. As promised, I'm here at 5 p.m. ready to answer all your questions. Now, we had a video before where we just showed the box for the iQOO 3 and we told you to post all your questions out there so that we would be able to answer all your questions after the event was over and the phone had launched. So that time has arrived. Here I am. I'm just waiting for you guys to tune in, and we already have our first viewer. Hello out there. We're going to talk about the iQOO 3 5G today. I'm going to take all your questions, probably help you close all your doubts about the phone, and do let us know in the comments whether you'll be buying this phone. I'm very interested to see what's the market, what's the target audience for this smartphone is at 44,990 for the 5G variant, which I have in my hands here. This one is quite expensive, but it's also really, really powerful. You must have watched our videos that we posted in a couple of days. Today we posted a video on the iQOO, especially about the performance, and we even did a comparison with the Realme X50 Pro, where we saw that the iQOO 3 5G had indeed overtaken the X50 Pro in terms of at least the benchmark numbers, although the gaming bit was more or less at par. But what the iQOO 3 does have give an edge over, especially in gaming, is presence of these monster buttons on the edges. If you can see, I'm just waiting for the camera to focus on it properly, but there are these two monster buttons on the edges which are basically pressure sensitive. So while you're playing a game, all you need to do is just use these two fingers for your headshots, for your shooting, while you're aiming, all those things. So it does give you an extra edge. It gives you two extra fingers to work with while you're gaming, and you don't have all your fingers just interrupting your smartphone display like this. More than that, there is the 865 inside, which does render a good 10-15% boost in performance, but there's also 180 hertz of touch sampling rate on this 6.44-inch Super AMOLED display. What does it do for you? Well, the 180 hertz touch sampling rate basically improves the sensitivity of the display. So if you are touching less than a second, say, the touch is going to get registered instantly without any delay whatsoever. That comes especially handy when you're playing, say, a racing game where every tap counts when you make the right corner, or when you're playing, say, a first-person shooter, especially a PUBG Mobile-like game, where every bullet counts and you just need to be the faster one to the trigger and get the shot done. So I'm going to be taking up the questions that you guys asked in the previous video on the iQOO, where we just showed you guys the box and basically left you guys hanging under the teeth. So we're going to start with the first question, where somebody is asking, tell me the screen refresh rate and the touch sampling rate of the iQOO 3 5G because I am a gamer. Good. Gamers will love this fact that the iQOO 3 5G comes with 180 hertz touch sampling rate. Like I mentioned, it helps you to have that edge over the opponent by registering your touch much quicker than what the other side can. So if you are in a dual save where both of you will be pressing the trigger at the same time, but this phone with a 180 hertz touch sampling rate will register that much quicker than the other phone. So you will have a better touch response. The display refresh rate, many of you are asking, it's still at 60 hertz, while I have here the Realme X50 Pro, which has a 90 hertz refresh rate display. Now, if you're a gamer, that 90 hertz refresh rate display won't really do much for you. Yeah, the UI operations look really smooth. All your transitions, your swipes and everything look really smooth. But when you're gaming, unless the game supports the gameplay at 90 frames per second, then otherwise it won't really do anything for you. And most popular games like PUBG Mobile and Call of Duty Mobile don't support 90 FPS yet, in India at least. So we have seen 60 hertz to be more or less adequate for games, at least as far as gaming is concerned. So on the edges are much more handier than a 90 hertz refresh rate display. Aditya is asking, will it get Android updates on time? Well, we don't have any word from iQOO at least whether it's going to get the Android 11 update, but good news, both the phones, the Realme X50 and the iQOO 3 5G, come with Android 10 out of the box. This one runs what touch UI, so almost all the things are same, but all your quick settings are right here instead of you having to swipe from below like in other Vivo phones. A good thing in my opinion. App drawer is there. You can optionally include your app drawer like I have. It's off by default, so you have to go to the settings menu, head to, there's this option here called the uh, home screen, lock screen, and everything else. So where you can change from app drawer version. Then is the 48 MP camera capable compared to the what providing you extra zooming capability for extra cropping capability? More or less, the 64 MP and the 48 MP sensors are the same, at least as far as the color reproduction, the sharpness, and the dynamic range is concerned. So I would say 64 MP is definitely looks good on paper, but as far as the performance is concerned, more or less they are at par. They belong to the same breed of sensors, just the number of pixels, megapixels on 64 MP is much higher than the 48 MP, but your results are going to look more or less the same. It's very difficult for me as a layman if I don't have the context to differentiate between a 48 MP photo and a 64 MP photo without zooming in. And I'm sure a lot of you won't be zooming into your photos a lot unless you are cropping it for clarity, but otherwise 48 MP 64 MP remains more or less the same. Please make a comparison between iQoo and Realme. Well, iQoo and Realme both with Snapdragon 865, LPDDR5 RAM. This one has UFS 3.0 storage. This one has UFS 3.1 storage. So numbers are definitely different, but they're not very different from each other. So they're more or less in line from what we expect all Snapdragon 865 numbers to be like. Antutu for this one is around 560,000, while this one went up to 580,000. Geekbench numbers are more or less in the 900s for single core, 3300s for multi-core, while 3D Mark numbers around 7,000 for Screenshot Extreme. So if you were into benchmarks, I'm sure these numbers would have made you in a way not all the people would have understood, but that's the thing about benchmarks, right? So will the 16 MP front camera do the job? Well, Vikram, the 16 MP on the iQOO 3 is more or less constant from what other Vivo phones have been offering. So when Vivo is especially good at taking selfies like what many people believe, and I also think I'm not much of a selfie taker to be honest, but I also think this one takes decent front camera images. As far as the iQOO UI is concerned, it's mostly pretty good. Like I like the fact that it's well optimized. There's no lag whatsoever while you're doing your operations, and the fact that the quick settings are now here like all other Android phones. And I also have an app drawer right here and quite a few more or less good changes. The camera app is a little different from other Vivo phones, but more or less it on paper, at least the benchmark numbers are concerned, this one is going to beat it to a pulp. World may, the iQOO 3 is more or less at par. Like you won't really feel any big difference in the experience. The speed, tops out in the higher end segment anyway. So between from Snapdragon 855 to Snapdragon 865, just the numbers look a lot different, but your experience more or less remain the same. Bhushan is asking, do we hurry to buy a 5G phone or should wait for more options to come? Definitely wait for more options to come. If you're buying this smartphone just for 5G, know that that feature won't really do anything for you, at least for the next 2 years. 5G auctions are yet to happen. Telcos are right now under a lot of stress. So 5G as a possibility is still quite a distant dream, at least in India. But if you are a frequent traveler who happens to travel to the United States, in China, well, don't travel to China right now. If you have traveled to the United States, Korea, Taiwan, a lot of other places where there's 5G already enabled, then the iQOO 3 makes a lot of sense, because in those countries, once you plug in a 5G SIM to this phone's going to give you download speeds you have never seen before on a mobile network. So that's that. But as far as India is concerned, 5G won't really do anything. But then, like most OEMs will tell you these days, that just like with 4G phones came first, and then came the networks after quite a few. Using this phone for at least a good 3-4 years, you don't need to bother about whether this phone has 5G or not, at least as of now. Right. Is this a independent brand? Right. Very controversial question. iQoo definitely likes to believe so. When we did our story about first when iQoo was about to launch their first phone in India, they had called us for a briefing and everything, and then we had reported that it was Vivo's sub brand, like it was the case in China, right? But then they quickly reached back to us saying that no, that's not the case. iQoo is now an independent brand, but it's still part of the BBK Electronics conglomerate, which also owns OnePlus, which owns Realme, which owns Vivo, which owns Oppo, and all those sub brands. So iQoo is just another sub brand for BBK. It's not a part of Vivo, even though it's running a fork version of the FunTouch OS, which is made by Vivo. And there are a lot of charging, a lot of tech and similarities that it shares with Vivo phones as well, including the camera app and a lot of things. But primarily, independently, it's going to be handled by its own marketing team. It'll have its own communications team. But I'm not too very sure about the after sales service. From what I think, it's still going to leverage Vivo's network of after sales centers for repair. But then we're going to find out soon enough about that. Let's go back to questions again. Right. What do we have? How is the performance of PUBG in K20 Pro in HDR? We're going to test that out soon enough. Just wait for it. Technical Dhamaka, we're only taking questions around the iQOO 3 and the Realme X50 Pro. Laptop questions, you have to read out to our laptop guy, who is Vignesh. Reach him out on email, reach him out on phone, and to ask him your question, and he's very proactive in answering. Right. There are no more new questions out here, but what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our previous video and try to answer questions from there. Let's see. Saksham Tiwari is asking, does it have IP rating? Does it have wireless charging, liquid, graphite cooling, and stereo speakers? How does the fingerprint sensor perform in terms of speed and accuracy? And how is the screen visibility under bright sunlight? Well, a lot of questions to unpack, but we're going to do it one question at a time. Does it have IP rating? No, it doesn't have an IP rating. 44,000, you're getting 5G connectivity, you're getting Snapdragon 865, LPDDR5 RAM, and a lot of other features. But what's not part of the spec sheet is an IP rating. So if you drop this phone in water, you can very well say goodbye to it. Wireless charging, no. Again, 44,000, a lot of tech being packed, but I'm sure they didn't have space to put a wireless charging coil at the back for it to be wireless charging supported. Although I'm sure a lot of brands still believe that wireless charging is just not ready for the Indian market yet, or Indians are not ready for wireless charging yet. They're more pushing for faster charging, and the iQOO 3 comes with a 55-watt charger inside, which tops up the phone in around 15 minutes, 4400 mAh battery. Whether it has liquid/graphite cooling, yes, the iQOO 3 5G does come with a carbon fiber vapor chamber inside, which does have a drop of water vapor that takes the heat away from the processor and spreads it out, right? So the glass does tend to get a little heated. We never saw it breach like 40 degrees. It always stayed below 40 degrees while we were running all our tests. So that's that. There's no much heating because that's more or less well covered. We don't know yet how the 5G performance is going to be like. From what I've heard, being on 5G does tend to increase the heat that is dissipated from the phone. Excuse me. Does increase the heat dissipated from the phone, so we're going to have to test out the 5G part if and when it comes eventually. How does the fingerprint sensor perform in terms of speed and accuracy? Well, I'm just going to give you guys a live demo. Here's the fingerprint sensor. Here's my finger, and I'm going to press it. Oh, I'm going to press it a little harder, and it's done. Let's do it again. Done. So iQOO did claim it themselves to be the fastest fingerprint sensor out here in the planet right now at 0.29 seconds. That's too short of a time for us to comprehensively and objectively test it out. We feel this is super fast. If you can't unlock it via the fingerprint sensor and you have facial unlock enabled, that's going to unlock even before you hit your finger on the screen, right? So a few more questions have come here. We'll take them. PUBG HDR Extreme नहीं चलता, किसमें चलता? I'm guessing you're talking about the iQOO 3 5G. Well, yes, you are right. HDR Extreme is still not supported, but that's because Tencent has not opened up support in. Oh, my bad. I just had a very heavy lunch. So, like I said, HDR Extreme is not supported in PUBG Mobile, especially for the iQOO 3 5G, and that's because Tencent has not enabled support for the Snapdragon 865 to go all the way up to 60 FPS. Because when we tested the iQOO 3 for gaming, we did play PUBG Mobile, and we did play PUBG Mobile at the highest possible settings, which was HDR for the graphics and frame rates may ultra, right? So for that, FPS is 100%. The numbers are off the chart, the best you can get, but 40 FPS is not. We have seen the OnePlus 70 Pro going up to 60 FPS. We have seen the Realme X2 Pro going up to 60 FPS. So I just believe Tencent just have to enable support for 60 FPS gaming on this, along with HDR Extreme, and everybody is going to be happy. Right, which will be your pick out of the two? So if I have to pick right now, because I am very much interested and invested in playing Call of Duty Mobile, I'm going to pick the iQOO 3 5G, and that's primarily because of the presence of these monster button out here, this one and this one, which does give me an edge, and I can get headshots after headshots. The HDR capabilities. So I'm just going to wait for the questions to pop up on my screen because they are not doing it. This platform is very buggy, it seems. When Realme X50 is in the market, why we purchase iQOO 3? Because between the two, you won't really get anything different. Yes, the Realme X50 does charge a bit faster, but it also have a smaller battery. Both have 5G, both have Snapdragon 865, both have LPDDR5 RAM. It's the same display size, same displays almost. This one has an extra front camera on the front, but are into taking a lot of photos and videos. This one makes more sense. That's it. कब तक आएगा? That we don't know. That question you gotta ask to Tencent, and on your behalf, when I meet folks at Tencent, I will ask them the same question and get back to you. Average life of a mid-range smartphone. Interesting questions, considering that mid-range smartphones have slowly started closing the gap between high-end and mid-range. I believe there are instances where you can run a mid-range phone much longer than before. So I'm going to give it a good 2 to 3 years for a mid-range phone, because if you are into if you bought a phone that gets updated regularly, then yes, that means a good longevity. Vikram Singh is asking, seems iQOO 3 feels heavy and thick inside even if there's no bigger battery. It does have a bigger battery. It has a 4400 mAh battery, a lot of 5G antennas. The camera module takes up a lot of space, and there is the Snapdragon 865 along with X55 discrete modem. So understand the internals here are pretty much crammed up. This is also have a smaller form factor from the phones that we have seen last year, even though the bezels have shrunk to accommodate for a larger screen. But yes, it's quite hefty. I do believe it's more than 200 grams, and it's not thin by any margin. You can see how thick this phone is. But if you ask me, in the hand feel is really good. I can technically use the phone one-handed and almost reach like the other edge. So this one is pretty good in terms of ergonomics and usability. So even though it's a little bit heavier, even though it's a little bit thicker, it doesn't really take away from the experience. Sound quality, we're going to have to test it out. We haven't really put this part to test yet, so you're going to wait for our in-depth review to find that out. Why brand don't adopt stock Android? Again, a very good question. Some brands do. You see Nokia, you see the Mi A series, you see Motorola and all still going for stock Android phones. Then you also have phones like OnePlus, which does have a UI that looks a lot like stock Android, but it offers a lot more than it ever do. So that's primarily the amount of features, the number of features you can push out, because you also need to push out regular updates. So the more the number of features, the more time it takes for the update to get ready, to get tested for all the features, whether they are working or not. So that remains one primary reason why most brands still prefer their own stock Android. Plus, they also need to earn money, right? So brands like Xiaomi, which they themselves claim to be a software first company, will want more users on their MIUI ecosystem. So having stock Android there won't really won't really complete their goals. So you have to make do with a stock with a custom interface. Now the problem with custom interfaces with both the Realme X50 and the iQOO 3 5G, it's not a Vivo iQOO 3, my bad, along with a lot of Xiaomi phones and a lot of Chinese smartphones in general. What they do is they come pre-installed with a lot of third-party apps, right? And these apps are basically duplicates of whatever you already get in the Google suite of apps, including for Chrome there would be another additional browser, there would be a separate app store for apps we downloaded from apart from the Play Store and everything else. So what that does is it's going to keep pushing you notifications that you don't want. And this is despite the fact you've not signed into any of those apps. You just started the phone fresh, and you're going to see within 10-15 minutes of your notification panel is going to get flooded with all sorts of notifications, including news headlines of news don't need to follow, obscene pictures, messages, and all those things. So that's definitely a problem I believe Chinese OEMs still need to address. But at the same time, they're also offering a lot of fun to find a way around these pesky ads and notifications. Then you're in for a very good experience with this smartphone. Right, now moving on to the next question. Is it worthy or justified for any phone on the basis of feature that they're selling 5G, but there's no 5G? Well, Jatin, I understand your question, but there is a bit of an conundrum that is, and I don't think this fault lies entirely with the OEMs launching these phones. You see, in December when Qualcomm launched the Snapdragon 865, 865 was not launched with a 4G modem. Qualcomm basically made it mandatory for OEMs to include the X55 Snapdragon 865 5G modem with the Snapdragon 865 processor. They're discretely placed, they're not integrated like before in the 855, but they're separate units. You have your chipset here, and then you have your modem here, and they work together. And you cannot just swap out the X55 and put, say, an older phone coming. Is not really an option for these OEMs. If you are, as an OEM, planning on launching a smartphone in 2020 with the Snapdragon 865, 5G will be an option that you have to provide. But then again, you can choose not to include all the extra antennas, the RF front end, and everything that goes behind providing the actual 5G networks apart from the modem. You can choose not to do that. You also need to get all the bands certified for which your 5G will get connected depending on the region. So that requires additional cost, that requires additional testing, and that increases the time you can take to go to market. So all those things considered, yes, 4G phones will be a possibility, as we saw with the iQOO's 4G variants. But know this, that when anybody promises a Snapdragon 865 powered 4G smartphone, they're basically not giving you the full capability of the 4G of the 865 chipset, which is sad. So network connection can be linked to processor. For example, ping in PUBG as is different when one plays on OnePlus and Mi A2. To an extent, yes, but I wouldn't say that the ping or the latency in this case depends a lot on the processor you're using. It depends a lot more on the kind of network you're on. If you're on a very stable Wi-Fi network in your home with a powerful router sitting right underneath the router, you're going to get a best latency with almost no lag whatsoever. Start going further away from the router, the further you're going away, the more the latency will rise. Similarly, with a mobile network, if you have a strong network around your area where you're gaming, you're going to get good latency. But if you're going to go away from a place where there's hardly any network, then you won't really find, and you're going to find a lot of latency, and your gaming experience will be hampered to a large extent. No, this is not dependent on the processor as much. I'll say around 5 to 10% is the processor, and more importantly the modem. But with good Wi-Fi and good mobile networks, you won't have any latency whatsoever. So that more or less is. We are here for half an hour almost, and I have to go back and write something more on the iQOO 3 5G. We just finished our charging test where we got our numbers between the Realme X50 Pro and the iQOO 3. And if I have to let you in on a secret, the X50 Pro charges much faster. We finished charging from 2% to 100% the Realme X50 Pro in around 37 minutes, while the iQOO 35G 25-watt charger, this took around 50 minutes. No, none of them are very bad, but if you really have to get things done quickly, this one's the one to go for. If you're heavily into gaming, this is the one you want. So with that said, I'm going to answers, and I'm going to catch you in another YouTube live very soon. Thank you.